Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Getting to Know Yourself Better Than the Devil Knows You. This is a topic and a series that I actually put together many years ago for college students, I find it that it's more relevant often for adults than it is for younger people. And the reason why I say this, for younger people, they at least know they don't know. Right? Because they're so young and they have no experience and so on and so forth. But older people, we live with this false notion of maybe pride or arrogance, thinking that because we have age and experience that we know. In reality, the only thing that we should know as we get older is that we know not. And that's something that very few of us have the courage of admitting, because I don't want to admit that I don't know anything. So when we're talking about getting to know yourself better than the devil knows you, I just want to clarify the title and what we're going to do for the next few weeks together before Rosh Hashanah. Number one, do Jews believe in the devil? The answer is no. We do not believe in the devil. Okay, there's no devil. Thank you so much. There's no devil. There's no place where anyone's going to dip your body into fiery furnaces and so on and so forth. We don't believe in this. We reject that idea. There is no angel that is fighting God. We believe that all the angels work for God. So the concept of a devil has been completely misunderstood. I believe that its origins probably come from something known as the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. Now let's explain what that is. The evil inclination is not evil. There is no evil in the universe. There's only good. There's only our perception of evil. When we perceive evil, it's generally an expression of God's absence. Where we do not see God, that is where we see evil, right? Absence. Where in the areas that we do not see God, that is where we see evil. Okay? So when we talk about a Yetzer Hara, really what we're saying is like this. In Judaism, the way we understand it is there's no such thing as a Yetzer Ra or a Yetzer Tov. Your choice will determine if that Yetzer, if that inclination, that desire is good or bad. The circumstance that you're in necessitates a response. The response will determine if it's good or bad. I choose to do good, Yetzer Tov. I choose to do bad, Yetzer Ra. There's no inclination is good or bad. How you respond to the inclination that the stimuli that you're faced with will determine what happens to this inclination. What is the job of this inclination? What is the job of this Yetzer, this Malach, this angel? This angel is tasked with challenging you, because we as Jews believe that the more you are challenged, the greater you become. That without challenge, you cannot achieve success. That your greatness comes from an oppositional power that's pushing you in the opposite direction that you need to be moving in. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're just going with the flow, you got to be careful, because you might be doing something that you should not be doing. Because generally speaking, the places that we grow the most has to do with the stress, the tension of overcoming something that's pushing us in the opposite direction. So for example, it was many years ago, I've used this metaphor before, I had this amazing dinner with these two Holocaust survivors, the Epstein family. They were my neighbors in Israel, it was the first time I ever had a sit down with two people who both, were these amazing survivors of the Holocaust. And remarkable people. They started a school for the deaf. They did like some amazing things. So we heard Mrs. Epstein tell her story about triumph and survival, and she reminded us of how her family, her father was a rabbi in a small town in Germany, and it was Friday night when the Germans came into the town, knocked on their door, burst into their meal while they're eating the gefilte fish on Friday night. Okay, they pulled him out of their house. Her father specifically kicked him down to his knees, held him as he watched across the street the synagogue being rummaged and rampaged by these SS men. They took out all the Torah, all the Sifrei Torah from the Aron, from the Ark. They brought him outside. They stripped them of their silver and of their coverings, and they opened them up and rolled them open onto the streets and set them on fire as this family watched in horror. Okay, and there's nothing they could do about it. They shaved his beard, they cut off his peyot, and after this 2 or 3 hours of torture, the family went back in to finish their meal, to say Birkat HaMazon, to finish singing Friday night songs, and had a normal Shabbat the next day. Almost like nothing happened, a little bit of denial and shock probably, but also trying their best to make sure that the kids were not traumatized from this experience. And what ends up happening is that the father takes the daughter on a Sunday on a fishing trip, takes them to the local river, and they spend time together. And he says, "I'm sending you away. You're going to France, and from France you're going to America." She's the only survivor in her whole family. She just actually passed away during COVID, 2020, 2 years ago. She told me this story in 1998. Okay, a long time ago, 24 years ago. And she told me that her father took her on this little journey, and as they're looking at the river, he says to her, "I want you to be mindful. You know, the fish that are living are the ones that are swimming against the stream. But the fish that are dead are the ones that flow with the stream." That's all he wanted her to remember. And she held this memory as an 11-year-old, or a 7-year-old with her father, and didn't fully appreciate its meaning, its depth, its message. And she shared with me, and I'm like, wow, that is gold. Such depth, right? Because so much of life is, let's just do what's easy. Let's let it go with the flow. Let's just ride it out. Let's just go wherever the day takes us. And that's not necessarily what it means to be alive, even though it feels like you're alive, but certainly that's not what life is about. Life is about something much more profound. And the first step of understanding yourselves is first answering the most important question you could possibly ask, is what is it all about? Why am I here? You can know yourself. We could talk about it. We're going to get there. We have exercises. By the end of this, you should get to know yourself a little bit better. Okay? Now, well, what are we here for? What's the mission? Why do we need all this? You're asking that question because you're a believer in God. If you don't believe in God, I can't help you. Separate class. You come back another time and we can discuss it. but today, this is for those that believe. Okay? It's very hard to grow if you don't believe that there's a God. Okay, it's hard to believe you don't believe there's a God. It's hard to believe that if you do believe there's a God, but he didn't communicate with humanity, that also doesn't work. And it's even more difficult if you don't believe that God communicated with humanity and gave us something called the Torah. If you don't believe in any of that stuff, it's very hard to have a meaningful conversation about growth and change. Because you first have to reconcile your own issues that you have with your own understanding of the nature of the world. But if you're here and you're listening to this, and you don't struggle with belief in God, and you don't struggle with God having to communicate the purpose, otherwise the purpose can't serve its purpose, right? Instead, you recognize that God is benevolent and loving and caring and kind, and that he is not like any other judge. That on Rosh Hashanah we talk about being judged. We're not afraid of being judged in the way you would be in a court. You ever anyone here do jury duty? Do you ever see some of these people they select for jury duty? It's terrifying. Okay, knowing that some stranger who is definitely not qualified to sit on a case, to preside over a case and determine your fate of judgment, or a judge sitting behind that little box who has who's in a bad mood for whatever reason and could easily switch a flip, with a stroke of his pen and a few words out of his mouth can determine your fate is terrifying. Right? But when you're coming on Rosh Hashanah, standing before a benevolent God who loves you more than you could possibly imagine, who will never, ever give up on his love for you, unlike a parent who can easily, not so easily, but could definitely give up on a child, can definitely choose not to love a child. Doesn't mean that you won't have an attachment. Or a spouse, that could end. Love is not infinite anywhere except for God. There's a powerful bond that's there. We're not aware of it, but it's there. Irrespective of how you feel, I'm telling you there's a force in the universe that is deeply in love with you in ways you can't begin to imagine, and they're never giving up on you. No matter who you are, what you've done, what you have not done, it doesn't matter. He's in love with you. And if the word he is, if you're uncomfortable with he, I don't care how you want to describe God. God is in love with you. Okay, now, having said that, he put you here, we believe, because you have a unique mission in this world that only you can accomplish and nobody else. Okay, now, this is a very important precursor to this conversation, because if you really want to get to understand yourself, you have to believe that you are here for a mission. There's two kinds of people that live life, and okay, there's one person who lives life, and he gets in the morning, he just gets up, and he's got to do the same thing over and over again. It's meaningless. It's survival. But there's another kind of person in this world who wakes up every single morning with tremendous amount of meaning in their day. Every moment is meaningful. Every action has purpose behind it. Everything they're involved in is about a step in helping them achieve something that gets them closer to their goal. Okay, this is the type of life that God wants us all to have. Most people don't get there. Most people are able to make small increment changes in their lives, small little things that are nice, but ultimately do not express their full potential. And I'm talking about the greatest version of yourselves. I'm talking about the most excellent version of yourselves. I'm not talking about, okay, I could be a little bit better, but I don't want to inconvenience my routine, and therefore I really want to keep doing what I do because I'm so comfortable doing what I do. I'm talking about breaking outside of those boundaries, the constraints you've created for yourselves, and thinking much more broadly, in a much more expansive way, to think about what does it truly mean to be the best of you. So what's holding you back? Now, having said that, number one, there's a God. Number two, you have to also be mindful that there is a dichotomy in each of you, that there are forces in the universe that are trying to prevent you from being the best you because they want you to be the best you, which is very confusing. Something that's preventing me from being the best me so that I can be the best me, right? So there's a famous author by the name of C.S. Lewis. Okay, he's written many books. You may have heard some of them. They've made some of them into movies. But one less famous, known as the Screwtape Letters. And the Screwtape Letters is a book on, have you read it? Screwtape Letters is a book that is a conversation with the devil and his nephew, who is this new recruit who he's training to teach him how to get people to sin. The whole book is a fascinating, fictitious conversation that if you were training the Yetzer Hara to go out and get people to stumble and fall, this is the manual for this book. And it's a bunch of letters he's writing back and forth. Screwtape is the nephew, writing back and forth these letters, like how do I do this? Getting insight into how to twist man and his thinking. So listen to what he says. He says, my dear wormwood, okay? Right? Wormwood is a great name for a devil because a wormwood is a worm that is deep in rotten wood. You don't see on the outside, it's happening on the inside, right? He's rotting away on the inside. And this is the way our Yetzer Hara gets us. Your evil inclination gets you by getting you to do things where you're not even aware you're doing anything wrong. It's not so bad. It's a little bit. It's a little word. It's just a light switch. It's just a this, just a that. The little things. But I do the big things. But the rot starts from the small little things. Be sure that the patient remains completely fixated on politics. This is so true. Remember, he writes, be sure the patient remains completely fixated on politics, arguments, political gossip, and obsessing on the faults of people that they have never met as an excellent distraction from advancing in personal virtue. Character are the things that the patient can control. But make sure to keep the patient in constant state of angst, frustration, and general disdain toward the rest of the human race in order to avoid any kind of charity or inner peace from further developing. Ensure the patient continues to believe that the problem is out there in the broken system rather than the recognition that there's a problem with himself. Keep up the good work, Uncle Screwtape. Right? So true. We're so focused on chitzoniyut, on external things, all the issues. It's Trump, it's Biden, it's the Republicans, the conservatives, it's abortion, this and that. All those things are a distraction. That's not the real issue. The real issue is that as a society, we do not have core values that we could coalesce around. That's the real issue. The politicians are aware that there's a breakdown in society, so they're going to exploit where humanity is. I don't care about the politics. Politics is a whole separate conversation. But in truth, if we really want to know what we should be doing as a people, we need to be building a society of people that have moral character and strength. We all agree on that. I think everyone would agree on that. No one wants to live in an immoral society. Those are the real issues. Let's argue about those things. Okay? The more, he says, the more often he feels without acting, the less he will be able to ever act. And in the long run, the less he will be able to feel. Such a haunting statement, right? Don't give someone the ability to believe that he or she has the power of changing anything. You're stuck. Nothing ever changes. It's always the same thing over and over again. The Shana is in this repetitive state, going over and over again. The earth is spinning around. It's the same season. Oh, it's fall again, same fall. Winter again, same. Oh, the holidays are here again. I remember it last year. Same thing over and over again. Wrong, 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 wrong. That's your wormwood. Trying to convince you that it's exactly the same, when in fact it's not. Every single moment of time is a precious gem that has infinite potential. You have to get out of your own mind's perception of reality, and it's warped perception of reality, and need to upgrade it a little bit. Okay? If you're stuck, if you feel that your actions don't matter, you are under the spell of a wormwood. It is far better to make them live in the future. It is unknown to them, so that making them think about it, we will make them think of unrealities. Okay, it is most completely in temporal part of time, for the past is frozen and no longer flows, and the present is all lit up with eternal rays. Like, I'll do anything to distract you from doing anything that you have to focus on right now. This is a beautiful take on King Solomon's words in the book of Mishlei. He says, Ene ksil, the eyes of the fool are biktzeh haaretz, are the edges of the earth, always looking for the future, never dealing with what they need to deal with right now. Okay, so we're here right now. Well, what does it mean to be dealing with right now? Who are you? Where are you going? Does everyone here have a clear picture of what it means to be the best version of themselves? When you say, I, what are you, me, I, what are you identifying with? It's not so clear to me, because we know, based on Sigmund Freud, right, there's something called the id, the ego, and the superego. Okay, so I'll give you a mashal so you'll always remember what they each are. The id is the horse. The ego is the rider on the chair, on top of the carriage, right, holding the reins against the horse. And the superego is your father or mother telling you that you're going the wrong way. Okay? So you have this horse buggy. That was very Freudian, right? And the id, the ego, and the superego. Now, which part of your identity, of the consciousness, of the narrator in your mind are you identifying with? Do you identify with the horse, the lowest part of who you are? Do you identify with the ego, the superego, the higher consciousness, lower consciousness? Where do you fit into this paradigm of being me? It's not so simple to just look in the mirror and say, well, what does that mean? There's different thoughts that are happening in your head, right? And if we don't slow ourselves down, then it's very simple. It's very easy to think that all the thoughts are you, when in fact they're not all you. Not all those thoughts are you. Some of those thoughts are yours, and some of them are not. Some of them are coming from outside of you. This is what Hill says. Hu haya omer. Look at source number 2. Im en ani li mili uksheni atzmi mani v'im lachshav ematai. What does that mean? Look at Rabbi Menachem Mendel, right, of the Kotzker Rebbe. He says, if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I and you are you. But if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I and you are not you. Meaning, well, if so much of who I am is a reflection of what I see around me, and if all I'm doing is copying my environment, then you're not really being yourself. If everyone around you is just mirroring what they see around themselves, then they're not truly expressing the best of who they are. When Hillel says, Im en ani li mi li kshni atzmi ma'ani, what's the difference between the ani and the atzmi and the li? These are 3 different words that are used to describe the self. The ani, the atzmi, and the li. Right? He could have written this very differently, but he's also, I believe, double-clicking on this idea that there's different aspects to my consciousness. The ani, the atzmi, and the li. Maybe the ego and the superego, maybe this is where Freud got it from. Right? I don't know. But I know that there are different layers of consciousness that are happening for you. For some of you today, you got up in the morning and you're like, should I go to this class today? It's such bad weather, it's raining outside. Maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. But if you're here, you made it. If you're watching this, you didn't make it. Okay? Right? And that consciousness, that thought that you kind of like surrendered to is not supposed to be a thought that you listen to. Right? The real reward for the class is just showing up, like people in the room did right now. right? The real schar, yes, even people on Zoom don't get full credit. So you have this idea, these different competing thoughts in the head. Well, which one's you? So the thought that pushes you to be the best you, or the thought that asks you to be the lower version of you, both of those thoughts are not you. The real thought that's you is the thought that makes the choice between one and the other. The awareness that there's a choice being put before you right now. Right? It's like we said a couple of weeks ago, Re'eh anochi noten lefnechem hayom. Ata bracha v'eta klala. Behold, be mindful that I've placed before you today, comma, the blessing and the curse. But there are some that read that verse a little bit differently. They say, Re'eh anochi noten lefnechem hayom, period. See, I've placed before you today this thing called today, now, time. How you use it is a bracha, a klala, a blessing or a curse. That's your choice, right? How you use your time is your choice. If you're racing through it, looking at the future, you're missing out. You're stuck in the past, you're missing out. Because the real place where you can become you is in the now, right here, right now. But if you don't have clarity as to where it is you're trying to go to, what you're trying to accomplish, where it is that you can be a better you, you're stuck. You're not going anywhere. You're not moving anything. And the real question is, what does it mean to be you? So let's just turn the page for a second. Source number 4. We say, Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazarta bi nishmati b'chem la'ara ba'emunatecha. We're asking God, we're thanking God for being something called, we're thanking Hashem for the ani. Well, what is it when we say Modeh ani lefanecha? What are we identifying with? Are you the body with the soul or the soul with the body? Are you something else? Are you just distracted? Are you just allowing yourself to go with the flow? Are you part of what we call the zombie apocalypse? The people that are just living life, not thinking. Just watch whatever's on TV, whatever's in front of them. That's what's motivating their emotions. That's what's making their choices. Every ad you buy right away because it's an ad that's there. You're not thinking anymore. Right? That's not what it means to be Jewish. To be a Jew means to exercise something called bechira, free will. You can choose. You're not stuck. Your nature, it's my nature, it's my habits. To me, that's what I call an excuse. It's an excuse. Your nature does not define, your nature influences you. Habits influence you, they don't define you. I have a predisposition to a certain kind of personality. I'll lean a certain kind of way. That doesn't define who I am. Just because I feel a certain way doesn't mean that that's what I have to be. I can be more than my emotions. I can be more than the circumstances I find myself in. What does it mean to be ani, anochi? What does it mean to be you? And I know, you might be thinking it's too late for me to ask that question, Rabbi. No, it's not too late for you to ask that question. It's a question you should be asking every single day of your lives, because every single day is a new opportunity of expressing a different part of you. So you choose. Hasidic tale, a man who once, God says it, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, Asher hotziticha me'eretz Mitzrayim mibeit avadim. God says, I am the Lord who took you out. He says, I am the Lord. He knows what he is. He knows himself. He knows his responsibility. He knows what he stands for. He understands his core values. Clear. I'm the guy that stood with you. I'm the God that stood with you in the slave pits of Egypt. And I acted in time in history when it was the best opportune time for me to do so. Anochi Hashem, I. The I is important. Your identity is super important. And if you don't have clarity of what it means to be you, you will always struggle with happiness. You will struggle with finding meaning. Because real happiness and meaning comes from an individual who lives life which is able to express the best of themselves, the I, the Anochi, the Ani, the Atzmi. And I'm not talking about a superficial life where all you're sitting there is thinking about, mindfulness meditation and just thinking about, your breath and sitting in a corner or moving to an ashram. That's certainly not Jewish, right? To be a Jew means you're living in the world around you, that you're asking yourselves, how can I make the world around me a better place? How can I make my family better? How can I make myself better before you go to your family? How can you make yourself better before you go to your kids, your siblings? But it's this idea that we're in service of something. And there's two things that we're in service of. We're in service of ourselves. Oh, that was very mystical, right? We are in service of ourselves, right? And we're in service of the world. So someone who's only thinking about themselves is super selfish. Someone who's only thinking about the world around them is super selfish. Why? Because you're choosing a life of superficiality. If you're giving to the world around you and you're not building yourself up, right? That's superficial giving. Superficial giving. If you're giving to everyone around you, right, but you're not caring for yourself, that is superficial giving. Even though I understand why you may think that, oh, that's a meaningful kind of giving because I'm being selfless. But in Judaism, to be selfless means to do what's right first. And to do what's right first is to care for yourself. You have to have some self-love. You have to have time for yourselves, build yourself, care for yourselves, build yourselves up as individuals, inspire yourselves. Don't just wait. Just giving is a bit, I know people do this all the time, and all of you know people like this. They're always giving, and they expect everyone to give and to sacrifice as much as they do, and they're never happy, those people. Because no one's ever going to sacrifice as much as they do. Because they want to sacrifice themselves on the altar of giving. That's not what life is about. Life is about being balanced. We've spoken about this, right? We want to be balanced. So we have to find this golden means of being someone who is aware of themselves, who they are, not being lost in a world of only obsessing of themselves, a narcissistic view of the world where it's only me. But at the same time, being aware of my own need, being aware that my responsibility is to the people outside of me as well. That space in between is what we're aiming for. Any extreme is bad. Any extreme in Judaism is bad. And I teach this to my children. And my kids will always ask me, even learning, Abba? I'm like, yes, even learning too much is bad. Even praying, I'm like, yeah, even praying too much is bad. Because if all you're doing is praying and there's no action after your prayers, then you're missing the point of what prayer is about. I want you to pray. But if that's all you're doing, you're missing the point. That's not what tefillah is. So look at number 6, a Hasidic tale. A man who once approached one of the great Hasidic leaders, who in turn asked him, "For what did you come here?" "To find God." So the rabbi says, "Then you came for nothing. You're wasting your time." "Why?" "God is everywhere." The rabbi responds, "Then tell me, Master, why should I have come?" "To find yourself." You want to find God? You want to find a deeper connection to the Borei Olam? You have to spend time clarifying who you are and where you're going. You don't have clarity into who you are and where you're going, you're not going to find God. There's godliness in you. We believe you're created with Tselem Elokim. You're created in the image of God. You want to find the Almighty, you got to look within yourselves first, but not losing yourself in that process of just digging deep within you, looking outward as well. David kol adab bnei Yisrael v'amarta lehem kadoshim tiyu ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem. It's clear God is holy, and He's asking you to be holy. What does it mean to be holy in Judaism? When you think of the word holiness, what images come to mind? You're thinking of like an old rabbi maybe, or a woman whose hair is covered and like she's with a Tehillim book. I don't know, what images come to mind when you think of Kedusha, of holiness? For me, when I think of the word Kedusha, I think of boundaries. Of boundaries. I think of discipline. I don't think of a Kohen. I don't think of someone sitting. I think of the boundaries that are necessary for each of us to set up so that we can achieve greatness. That's what Kadosh means.
And what do you mean by boundaries?
Boundaries means that I can't do whatever I want to do. Even though we believe that if I could do whatever I could do whatever I want, I'll be happier. That's not true, right? We know that. That anyone who does whatever they want, whenever they want, generally is not happy, is unhappy. That the restrictions we put upon ourselves, the boundaries we create for ourselves, is where true meaning and happiness comes. The greatest expression of this is under the chuppah, when a husband and wife take on that vow, Harei ad mekudeshet li b'tabat zo. Will you be consecrated to me with this ring? Kedat Moshe v'Yisrael, according to the laws of Moses and Israel. What's happening in that moment? We say mikudeshet, mikudeshet, mikudeshet when she accepts the ring. That they are mikudash, they are holy. Where's the holiness there? What did they just do? So the commitment to what? The commitment to be there for the other and for no one else. The boundary that they set at that moment. That I am to you and to you alone, and you are to me and to me alone, is the boundary that builds the kedusha that defines the marriage. Right? When God says that He wants you to be holy, He's saying He wants you to be a people that's somewhat separated. He wants you to be a people that is disciplined. He wants you to be a people that has boundaries. Don't do whatever you want. Don't go wherever you want. Create boundaries for yourselves. What are the boundaries? What does it look like? Well, I'm not sure. Well, let's clarify what they look like. I'm not ready for all of them. That's fine. I'm not saying you should be ready for all of them. That's a lot. But at least clarify who you want to be and where you're going. Standing stagnant is not an option. You're standing still, you're with the fish that are flowing with the stream, going backwards, or with the fish that are dead. The fish that are living, my friends, are always swimming against the stream. They're not just standing still. Real happiness, real transformation comes from never, ever giving up, no matter what. It means having a clear vision of who you want to be and working tirelessly for the rest of your lives to actualize that vision. That's all it is. So the first thing is, A, do you want to know who you are? 2, are you willing to create the boundaries to be a kadosh that allows you to get there? Okay? Figuring out who you are is not a simple thing. Step by step, we're going to get there. Vayomer Hashem el Abraham. God says to Abraham, Lech lecha me'atzecha u'melotecha mebeit avicha el haaretz asher areka. Right? God says to Abraham, go for yourself from your land. And we know this we've heard this idea before. Lech lecha could also be go into yourselves. You want to grow. You want to become something more than the community, the country, the family that raised you. You have to clarify who you are. Lech lecha, into yourself. Who are you? Who do you want to be, Abraham? Do you want to be defined by your culture, by your community, by your family, or do you want to grow into something much more profound? Are you willing to become something much more greater? Oh, that's okay. We say, Lo takom v'lo titor et b'nei amecha v'ahavta l'recha kamocha ani Hashem. Don't take vengeance or bear a grudge, right? Because you have to love your fellow. Because I am v'ahavta l'recha kamocha ani Hashem. God is very clear about who He is. He's a lover of people. And in the same way God is separate, you got to be separate. In the same way God loves everyone, you love everyone. Rabbi, okay, I got you up until now. It's hard, but I get where you're going. But loving everyone is really just too difficult for me. Just people are complicated. I'm complicated. Can you really command love? And the answer is yes, you can. Love is a choice. It is. It's a choice.
Vengeance and punishment.
Oh, yes, there is. There's a big difference between vengeance and punishment. Right? Punishment is a... Vengeance doesn't have to be vengeance could be something small, like just denying someone's application. Right? There is evil in there 100%. But our job is to be people that are loving. Well, what are you doing to be more loving? How are you working on loving other people? You know, you can't love other people if you don't love yourselves. If you don't know who you are, you don't know where you're going, you don't love yourself, then you can't work with other people. It doesn't work. If you're clear about who you are, you're clear about what you stand for, you're clear about that vision of what it means to be the best you, then can work. But if it's not there, not going to happen. God says, I want you to be a nation of priests, goy kadosh, and a holy people. Right? This is what God wants from you. These are the mission statements that we have as Jews. We have to be individuals who are willing to clarify who we are. We have to be willing to be kadosh. We have to be willing to go ahead and be a mamlechet kohanim. We have to be willing to emulate God. That's what this means. There's nowhere here, none of these verses are referring to anything about stagnation or settling or just resting. The world is hiding a truth. The word olam has the same shoresh as ne'elam, is hidden. The world is hiding a truth. And the truth is that there's tremendous amount of meaning and potential in every moment of life. But if you're not trying to excavate that, if you're not trying to bring about that potential, then you, my friends, you'll always be stuck. You'll never find true happiness. You think you're happy? I'm telling you, you can be happier. You think you love people, you can love more people. You think that the mission is over, you're just getting started. You're here. And if you're here today, it means you have a lot more to accomplish. Don't give up. Don't allow the past to define you. We have to be willing to go, lech lecha. Go for yourself. Amode ani lefanecha. I am grateful. I have the humility to recognize that I am here today, which means I have a unique mission today. If I'm not living a mission-driven life, then you'll be pulled in by all the distractions around the world, like Mr. Wormwood said. Look at source number 11. Ani Hashem karaticha betzedek v'achazek be'yadecha v'etzrecha v'etanena librit am or legoy, right? Or legoyim. God says, I am the Lord. In my grace have I summoned you, and I grasped you by the hand. I created you and appointed you a covenant people, an or legoyim. What does it mean to be an or legoyim? What does it mean to be a light unto the nations? A good example. Well, let's talk about what does it mean to be a good example. Does a good example mean like once a week on Shabbat? An or is always lit. When it's lit, it's always on. There's no break. Once it's off, you're not an or anymore. It's over. To be an or legoyim means a constant fixation on being good. If you are not working on being good, it's very possible that you are, in fact, bad. Because this is the mistake we make. You mistakenly believe because since you are not doing evil, you're good. But who says a passive approach to life where you are passively just ignoring the potential of bringing good into the world means that you're good? Yeah.
Are we discussing a passive approach to life, or are we discussing and putting on the platform a passive approach to the halakha and to all the laws of Judaism?
I'm not talking about the laws of Judaism. I'm talking about getting to know yourselves. Now, do I believe that halakha plays a role in it? 100%. Do I believe that everyone is ready for all of it? The answer is no. And I make that very clear. I'm not here to judge anyone and tell them what to do or how to live their lives. But at some point, you're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not. That's why I started this way. You have to figure out whether or not you believe this is true or not. It doesn't work if you don't believe it's true. Do you know what I'm saying? Once you take on a philosophical position, well, it's whatever it's convenient for my narrative without philosophically exploring what is true, or at least struggling with how to overcome the things that are holding me back intellectually, then you're just doing what's convenient for you. That's just being lazy. And unfortunately, I believe that's most people. I don't want to do anything. I'm comfortable. I like this part of Judaism. I like this part. That's not for me. That's for the religious people, right? That's for those crazy fanatics. I'm not a fanatic. I think that is so destructive. It took me a long time to be able to overcome that idea in my head. And I realized that for me, it was once I was able to embrace all of it, and I didn't jump into it. I was the slowest guy ever when it came to taking on anything. Super slow, super slow. Take your time. The tallest mountains are made of small grains of sand. Our religious journey is about making small, little movements. I am not telling you to do anything that's crazy. All I'm asking you to do is figure out what you actually believe in. And if you do believe in this thing called Judaism, and it's all of its stuff, right? Then be mindful that there is a platform, a program in here that allows you to challenge yourself to be the best you. How you give charity, how we think about being mindful of the needs of the people, right? How we give back, education, what are our responsibilities to educate the next generation? Are we caring for the people around us? There's so many layers. Lashon hara, how we speak, what we see, shmirat einayim. There's so much there. There's so much depth. Don't overwhelm yourself by all of it. Find something small that you are ready to accept upon yourselves for this new year, Rosh Hashanah. Okay? But first, you got to clarify who you want to be and where you're going. What does it mean to be a better you? What does the best you look like? Have a picture of what the best you looks like. And by the way, it's very possible at the end of this class you'll say, that's crazy, there's no way I could ever do that. I hear that. But then my pushback to you will be, well, what are you doing to try to clarify it? At least get on a journey where you're working towards getting some kind of an answer. Start getting out a canvas and painting something on the board and try. Not everyone will succeed, but not everyone has to succeed. I have a brilliant rabbi who said something that forever changed my life. He was a young rabbi. He was very bright, and there was a man that he respected who tried convincing him not to become a rabbi. He's like, "You're too intellectual. You're never going to find students that are as intellectual. You're always going to be disappointed. You're never going to make enough money. Just go become a lawyer. You'll be super successful, and just live your life. You'll be happy." So he was teetering, back and forth. Should I just take this guy's advice and not go into rabbinics and just become a lawyer and start a family and do meaningful things, or do I do the things I really love doing, which is teach? So he went to meet a Rabbi Freifeld from the Five Towns. He was actually living in Israel at the time. He started a yeshiva called Shar Yashuv in Lawrence. It was in Far Rockaway back then. And he went to visit him, and he told him about this interaction he had with this very bright guy. And he came back to him with this amazing metaphor. He said, then there's two kinds of people that go to a pond. There's one kind of person who goes to they're both holding stones, right? One guy comes to the pond, and he drops a rock into the pond, and he just wants to see how far the rock goes to the bottom, right? That's one kind of person. But there's another kind of guy who goes to the pond, and he throws a pebble into the pond, and he just wants to see how many concentric circles come out as the rock hits the pond itself. There's two kinds of people in life. The people that are always looking to measure everything from beginning to end, those people are never going to find happiness. If that's what you're looking for, don't go into education. You're never going to be satisfied with what you're going to want from your kids, from your students. They're never going to produce what you want, right? You'll always be frustrated. But if you believe that you're here to bring a certain kind of energy into the world where you're constantly trying to expand those concentric circles, to do good, to bring positive energy into the world around you, then definitely go into education. And I love that idea for me as a person, right? What are you here for? Are you just here to see how far that stone falls down to the bottom of the pond? Or are you here to stir up some positive energy into the world? Think about it. Who do you want to be? Do you want to be the guy that just drops it and there it goes, it's on the bottom. Have a good day. Or are you constantly throwing those pebbles in there to see what type of power, energy you are influencing the environment around you with? So do you want to be an Or L'Goyim? Do you want to be a constant light onto the nation? Do you want to be someone who's striving for greatness? Or someone who just says, I'm part of really great people. Love being Jewish. I'm the cheerleader. Sports don't survive with fans. Judaism doesn't work with people just cheering on being Jewish. Oh, I love it. I love being Jewish. It's amazing. Yay! Doesn't work. To be Jewish means that there's a program. There's a platform here. It's asking us to do something. I'm not talking about religiosity. That's your interpretation of what you think Judaism is. I don't understand it that way at all. Judaism is a system for personal development and growth. It's asking you to be a moral person that is constantly striving to achieve excellence in your lives. It does have all kinds of requirements. It has all that there, but it wants you to be moving. I say this. I've met all kinds of students over the last 20 years on campus. There's been a huge movement of moving religious people from monotheism into atheism. And I've had plenty of kids who went to Chaim Berlin, Torah Vadad, these very religious schools, spent 4 years on campus to walk out completely destroyed of any connection to their Judaism, atheists. And I often tell them, I don't believe in those titles, but I'll tell you this: if you don't find God on your journey, that's okay, but don't ever give up looking for Him. We're not here to measure our success. We're here to try the best that we can. That's what this is. I was going to end with this Mishnah Torah, and then we'll call it a day. We'll pick up next week. We'll do more practical. This is more of an introduction to the ideas behind what I think is necessary for you to spend this week clarifying who you want to be, where you're going, building that picture, so that next week when we actually go through the actual avoda of articulating and clarifying and double-clicking on what it means to be the best me, you'll have a picture you can work with. Says Ketzad, he says, and how may man ensure himself in these tendencies so that he can be permanent with them? How does someone fix his habit? He should try once. Repeat it. And do it a third time. Things that is called upon him to do in harmony with the tendencies of the middle course. This we talk about balance. And repeat the practice continuously until he is doing it until the doing it will be accomplished with slight effort, and they will not be burdensome upon him. Then the tendencies will be fixed upon part of his being. And because the Creator is turned by these attributes, which are in the middle way, this way is called the Lord's way. Finding balance is God's way. And it is even in this that Abraham, our forefather, instructed his son, saying, "For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, that they will keep the way of the Lord. And he who walks in the ways brings goodness and blessings upon himself, even as it is said, in order that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he has spoken concerning him." Right? This is the path. What is the path? The way is, you want to build a habit, the way you build any habit, the way you grow yourself in any way, is by trying to reduce the amount of bandwidth it takes for you to accomplish the task. Any habit, which is what he's speaking about, positive habits can be profoundly good. You want to become something more, start pushing yourself in a particular area, keep doing it over and over and over again until you're no longer thinking about it. How do you do this? You come to a class, read a book, you have a study session with a chavruta, study with a buddy, you find a particular midah, a trait that you want to work on, and you constantly do it over and over again until you're not thinking about it. I spent 18 months working on being patient. Every single day, I had 15 minutes with a chavruta, where I had to call on, we had things we were reading, things we were charting, it was very measured. 18 months of being patient. I wanted to work on being patient. I worked on having more belief. I worked on having more honor. I worked on just being more aware, hakarat hatov, being grateful. These are things that don't come to people naturally. Some people they do, but just because those things don't come naturally to you doesn't mean that you can't make those things a part of who you are. But it doesn't really matter, because ultimately the question is, who do you want to be? What does it mean to be you? Only you can answer that question. I can't. And if you're not on a journey where you're working towards something, then you're sleeping with the fish at night. And that's not what I want for you. I want you to live in a world where you express the best of you. You want this Rosh Hashanah to be meaningful? Yeah? Spend time clarifying the picture of who you want to be, of what you want the world to look like, what you want the environment, the family, where do you want them to go? And then ask God for the strength to get there, and don't give up until you make that your reality. Wishing you an amazing week, Bezrat Hashem. Next week, I promise, Bezrat Hashem, I will be on time. So 12 o'clock, I'm not driving, I'll be here by train. And we'll see you all, God willing, next week. Thank you so much for listening, everybody.